Good evening all, and welcome. Before the video begins, I need to make you aware that this month I am hosting a mega giveaway. So listen up to hear how it works. There are 8 surprise mystery boxes up for grabs. A new box will become available every 3 days. And to enter, all you need to do is to leave a like and a comment, press the little bell icon, and be subscribed to Mortis Media. However, there is a catch. You have to have left the like and comment on each video that came out in those 3 days in order for your entries to count. Today is the final day for your chance to win the 3rd box. So make sure to get those entries in and tune in tomorrow to see if you have won. There is also going to be a handful of consolation prizes to those of you who didn't win the box, and will only be eligible for those who have commented and liked on every video in May. Best of luck, everyone. But for now, it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. One evening, around 11 p.m, I was playing my bass in my living room with all of the lights on. Then it felt like gravity weakened, similar to the feeling when you are about to descend on a big hill from a roller coaster. I looked up from my instrument and saw this 7-foot-tall, oval-shaped, rippling mass that was blacker than black. The best way I can describe it is that it looked like the absence of light. I was looking directly at it, and then it slowly began to move across the room and through the wall. I turned around and saw a white ball about the size of a golf ball hovering at the top of the door frame. It stayed there for maybe a second or two, and then shot down diagonally to the floor. Shortly after that, the feeling of gravity returned, and then I freaked out, because I had no idea about what I had experienced. About a year later, I moved into an apartment building with my mum. One day around noon, while she was at work, I was in the kitchen, and I felt my mum's presence there. That same feeling you know when someone is in the room as you are, but they aren't looking at you. Automatically, I turned around to see if she were there, but instead, I saw this humanoid being standing roughly a foot in front of me. I am 6'4". From where I was standing, it looked like it was about the height of where my chest is. It had no clear features. The entire being was vibrating on the spot and had swirling colors of red, green, and silver all over it. I looked directly at it and then got the impression that it noticed that I noticed it. Once it registered that, rather than turn around, it turned inside out. Its front became its back, and its back became its front. Then it withered down the hall into a closed closet door. I calmly walked to the door and opened it, and there was nothing there. The weird part about that experience was that I didn't react. I registered it as another mundane experience like washing dishes. I went and watched TV after that, and didn't give it much thought. I need for you to be aware, though, that I was completely sober on both occasions, and I have a clean bill of mental and physical health. To this day, although I'm not too fussed about it, I genuinely have no idea what I saw that day. This happened to me about 16 years ago, so I must have been around about 10 or 11 when this occurred. My parents' basement was and is unfinished, and we had a small TV and a single couch in the middle of it for my siblings and I to go play games, watch VHS tapes, or whatever. One night, I decided to hang out there by myself and watch some movies, and I ended up falling asleep on the couch. While asleep, I was in a dream where I was in the exact spot that I was in the basement, watching TV on the couch, when something asked me, "What channel are you watching?" Still in the dream, I turned and said, "Channel 13, only to see a short alien sitting next to me and staring right at me. Of course, I wake up out of fear in the empty basement, which is now dark. I'm sure my parents came down to turn off the lights and TV. I am frozen in place for a moment, until I hear something behind the couch. I sat up to turn around, hoping to God it was our old dog, and there it was. The alien from the dream, rising about 2 feet behind the couch and walking towards me. I'm sure I let out a blood-curdling scream as I bolted upstairs and right to my parents' bedroom. Everyone, including the dog, were up there, and to this day, I believe what I saw, as crazy as it sounds. It doesn't help that my mom and sister say they were hearing things constantly in the home for years, like people walking around at all hours of the night when everyone else was in bed. When I was living at home with my mum and sister, I was home alone a lot during the day due to illness. My sister is a pretty sociable person, so it wasn't unusual for her to head to a friend's house straight from college some days. So there wasn't a set time that she would be home. My mom, on the other hand, would roll up around 6 p.m. every day. It must have been about 4 on a weekday, as sometimes my sister would finish college early and would come home between 1 and 4 on these occasions. And I was gaming a little after finishing some housework. All of a sudden, from downstairs, I heard my sister shout my name. We're both pretty lazy, so this wasn't unusual. What struck me as odd was that the dog emitted a low growl. I gave him a little belly rub and put it down to her shouting, rousing him from his nap. It was strange, as I hadn't heard the front door being opened nor being closed. But I shrugged it off as me being too immersed in my game and not noticing. I shouted back, "What?" but no response came. 2 minutes later, I heard her shout my name again, louder this time. Now my dog started barking, royally pissed off. I again responded, "Yeah?" but received no reply. With a sigh, I walked to my bedroom door and shouted down the stairs, "Hey, what's up?" But there was no reply. Laziness and defiance prevailed, and instead of going downstairs to see what it was that she wanted, I decided to call her phone. She answered after a few short rings, and I asked her what it was that she required. Confused, she said she hadn't tried to text or call me, and I told her that she'd been shouting my name from downstairs, and I wanted to know what she wanted. She then informed me that she was still at college. I called my mum, and she was still at work. I cautiously went downstairs to check the house, but there was nobody there. My mum and sister's dogs, though, were sitting in the kitchen, cowering in the corner. I went straight back to my room and stayed there until my family got home, thoroughly creeped out. Back in 2009, I got a call from my friend Chris. This was 2 years after we went our separate ways for college. I was 20 at the time. He had begun to tell me of this island that we needed to go to. We had grown up together and spent our youth exploring the ins and outs of our small Midwestern town, so I was all for it. He had explained to me that him and some of his friends had found it when they were exploring in the river. He had told me all about it and was excited to share his find with another person. I was jealous that I wasn't there when it was first discovered, but I got over it and got pumped to see what he had unearthed. It's been a running joke that I don't know how to swim, never did, and probably never will, and the island lay in the middle of the river. Usually, the waters weren't high, so he reassured me that all I had to do was wade behind him, and that our other friend, Simon, would be there behind me in case I hit a sinkhole. Sucking up my nervousness of aquatic things, I agreed, and we popped off our shirts and sunk into the muddy waters. The island looked close from the banks, but took some time to get to in the chest-high waters. As we floated with the current, we made jokes and spent our time bullshitting. None of us had a camera due to the fact that we didn't want to get our phones wet. And who really cared? He had already taken pictures from his last quest. Now was just time to show us. Once we pulled our bodies up onto land, we took a minute to breathe. Chris had taken his shoes off to keep them dry and left them with our t-shirts. But it wasn't a place to be without feet protection. Wild bushes and branches lay strewn about everywhere. The island looked fairly untouched. It was in the river next to a state park, but still deep enough where people wouldn't bother it. We followed Chris's lead into this thistle, and after 4 or 5 minutes, we found a clearing towards the center. In its lay was what we were looking for. There was a giant ceramic arse of a lady sitting next to a lawn chair. This wasn't just some art project. It was well detailed. There was a marble stuffed into her to resemble a clit, and it was massive. We laughed and romped around, but I had a strange feeling on the island. It felt weird. My 2 other friends seemed a little creeped out, but generally blew it off. It stuck with me. A few weeks later, I decide that I have to go back to Vagina Island, appropriately coined by Chris, but my friend had no real interest in going again. About that time, I was living in my first apartment with a roommate during college, and had a few friends back home. My college was only an hour and a half away, so the travel was no big deal, and was always worth it when I pulled into my old driveway. I had been talking to a girl online, and decided that her, my friend Emmanuel, and my roommate Jaden, and me would meet for the first time, and that I would take her to Vagina Island. It had a mystical pull to it, and those that I told didn't seem to believe me, so I agreed. I picked up my 2 friends and eventually met up with Amanda, who uneasily got into my car, but we all hit it off pretty quickly. The drive was about 40 minutes or so. We stopped to buy basketball shorts that we could wear in the river, as Emmanuel had my wetsuit from the trunk that I had carried around for a couple of years, because I was young and it was humorous, and we picked up a waterproof disposable camera. We get ready to go and make it to the island. I am unfamiliar with the layout, since Chris led me the way, so we wandered around until we were able to find just where we needed to be. The first thing that caught my eye was that it was different from last time, just a few days before. The bottom of the lady was still there, but this time there was more, and it had grown in creepiness in an intense manner. Next to the bottom half is a full-bodied woman laying in pale white cement, staring up at the sky. This immediately freaked us all out, especially after I had just hyped up the vagina. She looked ghostly. She was wearing nothing but rain boots, and her nipples had been painted gold. We each shot glances towards each other, and then to her. Our first reaction was that it was a real person, so we inched slowly towards it and swiveled the rain boots. She cracked and showed wire reinforcements under it. I let out a huge sigh of relief under my breath, and we continued to look around. I still had a weird feeling, and joked about setting up a camera to catch this guy to see who he was. When looking through the trees to find a place for our imaginary camera is when I saw more. A vagina hung from a tree just over our shoulders. At this point, we all start getting a bit freaked out and notice that there are candles by the chair. At the time, I couldn't remember if I was so caught up with the excitement the first time, or if these were new as well. All it took was for one of us to say, "Let's go," and we all followed suit behind. It wasn't quite the fun, carefree romp that I had promised. It wasn't long until the next afternoon I was sitting around with Emmanuel, and we had decided that we needed to return to the island. Perfect. Someone was as intrigued by it as I. We called up a different girl this time, Sarah. Sarah was a small girl and wasn't too thrilled about going, since we decided to go at 5 in the morning to see if we could catch this guy in the act. Upon packing up, we grabbed a couple of baseball bats and set out into the dark woods to make it to the river. Once reaching the water, we realized how badly we had underestimated the temperature of the river when the sun wasn't warming it up. We felt the chill go through our legs and up to our chest. Sarah wasn't having it, and we took turns carrying her on our shoulders in order to keep her dry, which did nothing to make wading any easier. But at least she was a small girl. We made it and pulled out a flashlight and began going through the thick of it. I felt an ominous fear grip me, but said nothing. I couldn't be the friend that was too scared. I had grown up being that friend, so this time there was no looking back, especially as this was my idea. Everything that was creepy in the daytime was even worse, spotted by the moon. But we had made it. We stopped for a photo op before looking around. The first thing that caught my attention was the dead stare of the statue in the dirt. Leaves had fallen on her, and we kicked some of them away. She looked different though. My heart started pounding, and I realized that her vagina had been painted gold since we were there yesterday. We crept closer and kicked away some more leaves. Once moving some, we noticed something that had been covered. There was a cement plaque next to her that read "Equestrian." I inched away from the statue and tried to regain my cool composure. I had smoked on the way, and my pack had already been depleted. We all quickly look around to make sure that we were alone, and there weren't any other sounds other than the two of us, so we gripped our bats tightly, hoping that we wouldn't have to save the lone girl trapped on an island at 5 in the morning. We caught the vagina hanging from the tree again, and shivers climbed up each spine individually. This time, we noticed that it wasn't the only thing strung up from a branch. Right over my left shoulder was a collection of feathers that appeared to be some kind of charm and a shotgun shell. At this point, we had all decided that there was no need to be the bigger man, and said it was time to go. First, the vagina, then the chair and the candle, then the things in the trees. We had seen enough. This was capped off by the fact that in just the 20 short hours we had been gone, somebody had been there working. I think Emmanuel and I had made up our minds that we were no longer alone on this island. We started looking for something to take with us for a trinket that would go unnoticed, and scrounged around for a few minutes before I noticed a piece of bark next to the chair. It was a very detailed picture of a vagina, and written in black, it said, "Looking for 40-plus-year-old models." We were all pretty satisfied and filled with fear by this, and took off back across the river. We stopped through, carrying Sarah on our shoulders and making a lot of noise. With each splash came the thought that someone was behind me. The current of the water and the dark of night made putting sounds to a specific spot. The cold of the water and the struggle of the extra weight made my knees buckle, and Sarah and I toppled into the river. We had never been so happy to be back on the other side. I thought that was it, but a few months went by, and Emmanuel sent me a text message. He had been walking through a park by his college, about an hour's driving distance to the bank of the river. Holy shit, was all the text message said. It had the picture attached. It was the same guy's handwriting, paired with the same statement, looking for models. Where Emmanuel was at a dark, deep part of the woods, in a park known for hiking by college students. It was a college park. I remember my mind jumping when I saw that picture. I had thrown away the tree bark about a week prior, due to just that. It was tree bark. None of us had gone back there for some time, and we spent a lot of time sharing our stories with people, but never telling them where it was pinpointed. An island in the river by the state park gave a wide variety of options, and it was our little secret. By now, it's 2012, and Emmanuel and I lost touch. I had talked up Vagina Island with my friend Kai from Colorado, and when she came to visit for a week, I knew what we would do during one of those days. Pumped due to the fact that I hadn't been back in years and so much more could be there, I sped to the park and we broke off the trail towards the river. It was summer and it was very dry last year, and the tips of our shoes didn't even get wet. The entire river had been dried up for the season. It was the first time I had ever seen the Platte River this low. As we walk towards the island, I'm talking it up. The sun is up very high, so I feel a bit braver, and we get into the thick of the woods. It didn't take me long to notice that it was all removed. The giant vagina, the tree decorations, the chair, the candles, all of it. All that was left dangled from a tree. I walked up to it and saw that it was a bone of some sort, and assumed it was an animal's, and got closer to see that a dollar bill had been rolled up tightly and stuffed through it. I pulled the dollar out, and we left disappointed. Until this day, I have never found out any more about it. Emmanuel and I had spent a lot of nights discussing and calling the police and park rangers and have them check it out. But we enjoyed our little secret. I regret not calling, and curiosity continues to eat at me. The Platte River is not thin, and these statues were not small. We often bounced ideas back and forth about how would the cement get there, or if he did his work on the island by simply hauling a bag of cement across and by adding water upon arrival, as it will always and forever remain a mystery. And that may be the most difficult part about it, but also the most beautiful. If anyone would like to see pictures of the fabled island, you will be able to find a link to satisfy your curiosity in the description. My fiance and I used to live in a pretty old building. It was a super old apartment building, and it just had those vibes, you know? It was just creepy all around. The apartment was tiny, and all the people that lived in it were very strange. There isn't much setup to the story besides that. We had a few other tales, but this one takes the cake. We always sleep with our bedroom door closed, no matter what. It was a normal weeknight, and we were getting ready for bed. We got super cozy and left the door open so the air would flow better, even though it was a tiny space with a window unit in both rooms. I felt like I woke up, and shortly after realized I was having somewhat of a lucid dream. I start looking around the room, and I see something as I am scanning. The ceiling was recessed a little higher in the excuse for a hallway we had that was right outside our bedroom. It looked like a black figure was hanging from the top right corner in the hallway, just suspended and completely black. It freaked me out a little, so I blinked, and when I did, the figure was standing next to my bed. It looked like the silhouette of a woman, and she was looking at my fiancé that was next to me. I started to freak out, and the figure touched my fiancé's shoulder, and I could see her life leave her. She went visibly limp. I started wiggling out and reached to grab the figure. And I grabbed what I can only imagine was its boob, and squeezed as hard as I could. And I woke up, yelling. I checked to see if my fiancée was still alive, and she was. I was so relieved, and when she woke up to ask me what was wrong, I told her about the dream. She said she had a dream too, and it felt weird and unnatural, like something was watching her in her sleep. We didn't get back to sleep that night, and left that place as soon as we possibly could. 'Twas quite the fright. My mother's house has a back door that goes directly from the porch into the kitchen. The door has a large glass window in it that is uncovered. One day, I was going over to her house, and when I pulled up in the back, I very clearly saw a white-haired, elderly lady standing in the window of that door, smiling. I assumed she was someone visiting my mother, but I looked down to grab my purse and keys, and when I looked back up, she was gone. But I didn't think anything of it. I got out of the car and walked to the back door, looking in the front driveway as I went to see if there was an unfamiliar car there, but it was empty. When I walked inside, my mother came from the front of the house, back to the kitchen, and I asked her who was visiting. She looked at me like I was crazy and said that there was no one there, but I protested. I know what I saw. I even remembered the color of her blouse. That's not all though. I was home alone for a weekend a few years ago. After school one day, I was driving home, and when I passed in front of my house, I thought I saw some old lady in white clothes in my sister's room, looking through the window. Now at the time, I didn't draw a parallel between these two events. I thought it was stupid, so I went into the room to check out what it actually was, but I couldn't find anything. I pretty much forgot all about it until later that night, when I got called from a very panicked and scared neighbor, who let me know that there was an old lady pacing back and forth in my sister's room. He said he wasn't concerned at first, but after seeing it happen non-stop for nearly an hour and a half, he started to wonder. Obviously, I went back to check and found nothing. I still have no idea what it was, and fortunately, have never seen anything like it since. I just wish my mum would believe me. About 2 years ago, I was renting a house with my two friends. The house was incredibly old, had a wood stove with no furnace, and was pretty creepy at night. We lived off a dirt road, with 2 or 3 other houses. So one night, at around 3 or 4 in the morning, I woke up to my best friend coming home from work, as he worked the night shift. I heard him flushing the toilet, and it kind of stirred me out of my sleep. I groggily open my eyes and look around my room. I notice my bedroom door is still closed, but I see a man standing between my bed and the TV. I lived in a pretty small room, so the distance between my bed and the TV is maybe 3 to 5 feet at most. I keep a fan running throughout the night between the bed and the TV, just to help me relax at night and stay cool. I look at the guy, and he is just standing there. He's wearing a baseball cap, and it's down kinda low, so I can't really see his face. I notice he's wearing a grey hoodie, with his hands in the pouch, and wearing khaki shorts as well. I blink a few times and look at him and say, "Hey." No response. So, thinking it might have been my roommate's friend trying to play a prank on me, I speak to him again. "What's up, man? I'm trying to sleep. Get out." He just stands there, hands in the hooded pouch, shifts his weight a little bit, but still stands in the same spot, just looking at me. I get a little freaked out now, after seeing him move slightly. So being the pussy I am, I let out a slight scream and grab my pillow. When I turn back around and swing the pillow at him, the guy vanishes. After sitting there dumbfounded for about 5 minutes, I realized the guy was standing exactly where my fan sits in the room. All my windows were closed, and my door never budged. About 4 years ago, I went and picked out my very first pendulum. For those of you who don't know, you use it as a device to receive answers from what I believe is my own subconscious, or so I had thought. So I'm using my new oracle, and as I ask questions, it swings one way or another. North to south is no, and east to west is yes. Well, I start to get on a subject that really doesn't pertain to my life. I was asking about someone else's something you're not supposed to do. So it keeps swinging from north to south and then east to west, which I read as not to ask or to ask later. I kept asking, and I got the same result. So I went to bed. I remember waking up out of a dead sleep, and creepily enough, I remember the word demon coming to my mind for no real reason, other than my strange wake-up and the eerie dim of light coming through the window of the room. Immediately, my phone starts dialing out to some strange unknown number. It dialed out 3 times. The second time I knew something was very wrong, and all I could do was lay there and think, shit, as it rang 5 times for a third call out. After the third call, knock, knock, knock. There was banging on the headboard behind me. All I could do was sit up as fast as I could, and, like a reflux, these words left my mouth. God is with me, and God is here to help me. I'm not a religious person, and after that, I turned on the lamp and called my significant other. I checked the phone, and no record of the dialing out was there. And to top it all off, it had been 3 a.m. when it happened. I still use my pendulum, but I never stray from my own questions now. When I was about 5 or 6, we were living in a rented house that seemed normal enough, but strange things started to happen shortly after we moved in. My older brother liked doing these huge 500-piece puzzles, and he would put them together on the floor of our bedroom, and they started getting messed up during the night. Everyone naturally assumed it was me, but it wasn't. Not long after that began, I started having really bad nightmares about a woman in her early 20s. She was in a white cotton nightgown with violet flowers on it. She had long, wavy, tangled black hair and was swaying from the ceiling light, and she would stare at me with a look of pure hatred. It got so bad that my parents took me to a therapist who said I was having night terrors. About a month after the night terrors started, we moved to another house suddenly. My parents claimed it was because they found a house much closer to my dad's work. And just like that, the night terrors stopped and my brother's puzzles were being left intact. It wasn't until 15 years later, visiting the family, that I found out the truth. My mother was talking to one of our neighbors about my night terrors, and she said that another family with a little girl rented the place a few years before us, and she had the exact same nightmares, right down to the nightgown with the pretty purple flowers. The neighbor also mentioned that no one seemed to stay in that house for more than a year. My mum thought it was too much of a coincidence, so she started asking around and found out from an older couple in the neighborhood that a young woman had killed herself in the house in the early 60s, and my experience took place in the mid-80s. My mother went to the library and looked through information and found the news articles. It turned out that the girl, who was in her early 20s, had mental health issues and was being cared for by her parents, and had gone into that room in the middle of the night and had hung herself by the ceiling light. I never got to see the picture they had of the girl in the paper, but my mum said she had long, wavy black hair. I'll never forget her burning eyes as they looked through me in silent rage. I lived in a Victorian mansion turned into apartments, built in the late 1800s and haunted by a guy named Cap. Here are a few stories. I would smell cigars sometimes on the first floor, and was pissed because it was a non-smoking apartment building. I didn't know this at the time, but cigar smell in that particular area was normal. It was a common sighting area for Cap. The smell continued even after new tenants moved in, so I know it wasn't sneaky tenants. Another time, my husband's best friend was sleeping on the couch. At around 3 in the morning, I woke up to footsteps going down the hall. I assumed he was coming back from the bathroom and went to sleep. The next morning, he asked us why we were walking around the apartment at 3 a.m. He thought they were our footsteps. My neighbor is very particular about his shoes and arranges them just so. He and his wife heard footsteps around their bed, and when they stopped, he turned on the light and found his shoes scattered across the room. I don't think Cap liked those two very much. And this is my most direct contact. I was pregnant and having some bad tendinitis in my left hand, exasperated by pregnancy swelling. I am a flutist and couldn't play 3 notes in a row without issue, so naturally I was trying to work out the kinks by practicing troublesome combinations, got frustrated and began cussing up a storm and holding back tears. Suddenly, I hear a male whisper from someone standing next to me. "It's going to be okay." I searched the room in the apartment, and there was no one there. As terrifying as it was still oddly comforting. I moved out a couple of years later when we bought a house, but I still kind of miss the place. Hey guys, it's Mort here, And thank you so much for listening. I just want to say thank you to all of you who have entered the competition thus far. I'm really glad that so many of you want to participate, and it makes me so happy. It gives me even more encouragement to try and run more of these special giveaways in future. Anyway, make sure that you don't forget to drop that like and leave a comment, so that you get your entry into the competition. Don't forget that you needed to have hit the subscribe button and the bell icon, not only for the competition, but also to be up to date with everything I post. As I said before, today was the last day for your chance to win Box 3, so make sure that your entries are in. Best of luck. If you would like me to read your story on my channel, feel free to send it to my email or share it to my Reddit, which can of course be found in the description. Just please make sure to include as much description and punctuation as possible, as it's very important and will maximize the chances of your story being read in a future video. But anyway, for now guys, I am going to sign off. Stay awesome, and I will see you in the next one.